guys, welcome to the project. This one's called Anita. In this project we learn how to put a magnetic clasp in the front, and we've got a lot of interesting details in the side as well. The only thing that's missing is a top zipper, but you can choose one of the methods that I have shown you in all these different bags that I have put together for you. So you could actually add a little feature on the top and close it with a zipper. We also learn how to put the handles in a cross direction. Though the pattern looks straight, I'm going to use a technique to show you how to do this in case if you want to use this in any other project that you make. Let's go ahead and get started with this project.
Let's go through what we need for this project. I have already cut out all the panels that we need, and let's go through one by one. Here is a 6-inch wide zipper, and here is the pocket. I'm going to keep the pattern aside. In this pattern there's only at the bottom bit, there's no top bit for this, but I will show you how to finish this with a bias binding. How much of bias binding you need for the whole project, it's coming up on the screen right now. And here is the magnetic attachment, which we will go through in detail later on when we come to finish the bag. Here is the a little tab that this one, the bottom of our closure, is going to attach because it needs a little bit of stiffness. So I've given you a little template in the pattern, and I have cut out a double-sided fusible interfacing as per the template and cut my fabric out a little bit extra all around, because later on we're going to kind of fold it and iron it and make it into a template. Here is the flap that goes on the bag. Again, I have cut it out on the template. This is a heavy-duty double-sided fusing. I have cut out as per the template, and the fabric is a little bit extra all around. Again, we'll go through that in detail when we come to it. Here is the main part of the bag. 2 layers of main fabric, 2 layers of lining. I have taken a thick canvas fabric for my lining. And here is the side panel, which we're going to pleat and also have a little loop and a little belt passing through. That has got 2 layers of lining, 2 layers of main fabric. Now the lining is not the same as the body because the body is quite thick and heavy. Because we're going to pleat, it's important that you take slightly lesser weight fabric, or you could take a contrasting fabric. This is the side strap to pass through the loops. The straps I have already made up. If you want to learn how to make the back straps, then go ahead and watch how to make back handles. Here is a little template. You might be confused as to what is this. Don't cut this template out, because this is just after you finish your handle. This is just to keep in the corner and cut off before we attach. So it's only a template. Okay, here is the pocket and this is the zipper. Basically, we're just going to place the zipper like so. Keep the zipper about 1/2 inch away from the edge, and then go and sew a straight stitch. This is the stitch we have just sewn. Now fold the allowance like so and press it with a hot iron. Now we're going to turn over the other side, and we need to finish the edges. So tuck this in inside like that. Now what we're going to do, you can either sew it from this side or you can also sew from this side. Okay, let's go and put the top stitch so that the raw edges are completely finished. I've changed my foot to 8 stitching foot, and I'm sewing from the wrong side. So I'm just going to place it like so and just go and sew just at the edge. You have sewn in a neat top stitch, and that has also finished the inside. We're going to bind the edges with bias binding. Before we do that, you can see there's a little bit extra coming from the fabric, so let's just go ahead and trim just to make it's a straight line and it's easy to kind of get a straight stitch. Now what we're going to do, open your bias binding like so, maybe leave a little bit, like a couple of millimeters extra on the top, and then go ahead and place your binding like this. Don't pull your binding, just keep it easy, neat and nice. And when you're turning around the bend, just make sure you're not pulling, you're kind of easing the fabric onto the base. Okay, let's go ahead and sew somewhere in between, not on the fold, somewhere in between. Okay, change your foot to normal foot and let's just start sewing from the edge. Okay, that's how a pocket looks. I'm just going to trim this extra off. Now if you turn this over like so, you can see the pocket is quite neat. So what we're going to do now is fold this into half, and if you think the edge of the binding from behind is not matching to the edge of the binding, that's because there's too much of allowance. So turn this back in and let's just trim ever so slightly a light amount of seam allowance. So if you go ahead and trim maybe less than 1/8 of an inch, because that is what is taking a lot of room inside the bias binding. So let's just go ahead and trim this. And now if you just fold it into half and feel the edges from the top and the bottom and start making the iron mark, you will see that it will sit very neat like so. And now what we're going to do, you can see my binding in the corner has become a little bit narrow and the inside has gone a little bit wide. And what I need to do is just take it back in like so and take the center crease out and fold it again so my binding is kind of folded halfway through so it's even all around like so. Don't expect to get this right the first time because it takes a lot of practice to kind of get the neat edging all around this. Okay, so let's just go ahead and sew a top stitch on the inside curve of the binding. Now place the edge of this attachment to the edge of the binding and start sewing an edge stitch. We have done the edge stitching of the pocket, and let's just trim this extra little bit at the corners. And now what we need to do is to bind the top edge. Let me take a bias binding, about 1/2 inch extra here, 1/2 inch extra there. You could even take 3/4 inch to 1 inch extra. Flip your binding like so. Now from the opposite side, go and place the top of the pocket in between the fold and the edge of the binding. And now your stitching shouldn't come beyond this fold. So just go ahead and sew an edge stitch. I'm going to edge the attachment to the edge of my zip and sew a straight stitch. We've stitched here. Now you can see that my needle, my presser foot pushed the zipper puller away. So I have opened a couple of stitches here because this was kind of pulling, but you don't need to go back and sew. The reason being we are going to close that with a top stitch. So that little opening here has made it straight. So now let's go ahead and fold this on this side, fold it on this side, like so, and press it with a hot iron so the fold kind of remains where it needs to be. And now what we're going to do is fold this into half like that and go ahead and give it a good press. And now what we're going to do is go and sew an edge stitch from the inside of the binding, and after that's finished this is going to go as a patch pocket. I'm still using my edge stitching foot like so, so that I can get the same stitching like I have sewn on the binding. When I come close to the puller, I'm just going to lift my presser foot up and then pull the slider away. Now your U-shaped patch pocket is ready. Now we go ahead and place this on the lining and sew an edge stitch. Your pattern has a notch mark on one of the corners and that's the center, and it opens up to become the full panel. I'm going to keep this aside. I have made those 2 marks. My fabric is too thick and it will eat into the seam allowance. So I've not made the notch mark, but I have made pencil markings. Now let's just go ahead and draw a straight line. Just a light one. Don't make it too dark because otherwise it will see through. So let's just go and make a little mark like so. Now go and place your pocket under that mark. Okay, so straighten it up and match it to the straight line and place a couple of pins. Now go ahead and sew an edge stitch all around, attaching the pocket to the lining. I'm starting somewhere in the center at the top edge. When you come to the starting point, just give a little back stitch and finish. Our lining is now patched up with the pocket. We don't need to do anything else. We're just going to place it with the main fabric and then keep this aside and work on the side panels. Here is the side panels, and you can see there are 2 notch marks on either side. So just take the 2 main panels like so, and we're just going to go ahead and attach it to the lining. So that's how it looks. Just go ahead and either you can sew an edge stitch, or I'm just going to pin because later on we're going to close this all in the seams anyway. The next step is we need to prepare the side panel. I have already prepared one part of the side panel. I'm going to show you how to prepare this in the other one. So you need your side panel, which is the main fabric, and you also need your lining. You also need the side strap fabric, which is basically a rectangular piece, and you also need your bias binding. Okay, place your lining wrong sides together. In case if you're using a printed fabric, then you just have to make sure the right sides are facing each other, and this is the wrong side, and place it like so, and go ahead and sew a 1/2 inch stitch starting and finishing with a back stitch. So basically we are attaching the lining to the main fabric only here. When we go and attach the top of the lining, we're also going to go ahead and fold this strap into half like so, and sew a 1/2 inch stitch starting and finishing with a back stitch. We now go ahead and sew this rectangular piece, which is a side strap, and again starting and finishing with a back stitch. Okay, here's the stitch we have just sewn. We are going to turn this open like so, and just open the seams and press a hot iron. Now turn this over, and then because we've opened the seams, you just kind of get a really neat straight line at the edge, and just go and iron it on the edge so we can sew a top stitch at the edge of this panel. Meanwhile, we'll just take this fabric and open the seams as well. I've changed my foot so I could get a neat edge stitch and place it like so, and sew an edge stitch. Here is the top stitch we have just sewn. Now we need to make some markings. You can see there are 2 notch marks on the top of your side panel. Just go ahead and place a ruler and connect those 2 notches with a straight line. And then the next one here. Okay, let's go ahead and measure the distance between these 2 lines. It's coming 2 inches plus probably about 1/8 of an inch. So we need to take the loops a little bit extra. So if you look at this, these are the loops we are trying to create. So let's take the bias binding, and we need to make about 5 loops. So for 5 loops we need to make further markings. Let's go ahead and measure the center mark, and that is my center mark, and measure the second line, so that is my center mark. So that will be our first loop. After that, go ahead and measure 2 inches and 4 inches. Again at the bottom there's 2 inches and 4 inches, and on the other side again 2 inches and 4 inches, and 2 inches and 4 inches. So that's going to be our 5 loops. So now take your bias binding, fold it into half, go and press it if you need to. We're just going to go and sew an edge stitch on either side, so this forms our loop. Okay, So take sufficient, maybe a little bit extra of how much you need for 5 loops. Let's go ahead and do that. So now I just go and place my binding like so. Adjust my needle so that it gives you an edge stitch. Now let's go ahead and place it on the other side. Here is the loop strip we have just sewn in. So let's go ahead and take how much you need, and maybe a little bit extra, because we're going to dead on line mark, going to sew a binding on top of this. So I'm just taking a little bit extra and folding it into 5 pieces, and I'm just going to cut this off. So we're going to place each one of the loops in a straight line with the marking we have made, and we're just going to go and sew on both the sides so that they stay in place. This is not something that's attaching, because we're going to cover this with bias binding again. So let's just go ahead and place and sew on top. Okay, we're going to sew on the line now. Just make sure that you have a matching thread at the top and the bottom, and I'm just going to place it like so in the center of the mark. And now we go and sew on the other line, attaching the bottom of the loop. Okay, we have now fixed the loops. We need to go and bind the 2 sides. I'm going to fold my bias binding into half like that. Go and do an iron mark if you can't sew like this. Now what we're going to do is place it on top like so. Just make sure the binding is centered to the stitch, so it's hidden underneath on both the sides, so you don't see any raw edges or anything. So let's place it like so. Go and sew a top stitch on either side, and the same thing we're going to do on this side as well. I've changed my foot to the edge stitching foot. Place my binding like so. If you can't sew like this, then go ahead and tuck it first and sew an edge stitch. Just make sure that you place the binding centering the stitch. Now let's go ahead and sew a stitch on the other side. Now we go ahead and sew the bottom line as well.
Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the project. Leave me a comment below and let me know. I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching.